risk mitigation. Risk is not binary. I was just talking to Neil earlier about risk in general, where people tend to view things as like safe, not safe, secure, not secure. And that's not really how it works anywhere.
MagTech has maintained their high quality during the ammo panic and ramped production to the max. Their ammo is the only ammo I run on the range because of its performance and reliability. I recommend MagTech wholeheartedly.
On the road, home defense, shooting, you know, the COVID pandemic, all this different stuff, risk mitigation is a spectrum from like completely out of control, completely unsafe, completely unsecure to, you know, as secure gets. And ultimately, it's shades of gray, it's a spectrum, it's percentages. And there's no silver bullet. But because there's no silver bullet for any kind of risk, generally, I mean, the best way to not lose a gunfight is not get into a gunfight. So I guess that's an absolute solution. But generally speaking, there's no silver bullets for risk mitigation. So most risk mitigation measures in any discipline, not just home defense, are partial measures. So what do you say? Well, like this measure I could take isn't 100% effective. You know, back when seatbelt laws were going into effect and people were, you know, seatbelts were becoming fashionable, they're like, well, you know, here's this outlier and this and that, and you know, seatbelts aren't 100% effective. Well, no, but is 15% effective or 50% effective or 60% effective better than zero? Absolutely. But then when you add airbags and paying attention and staying off your phone, and you stack these risk mitigation measures on top of one another, and you add a 10% mitigation measure and another and another and another, that's how you get as close to 100% as you can possibly get. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today as it relates to you being secure in your persons inside your house, is stacking mitigation measures on top of one another to get as close to invincible as you can possibly get. Another great example. Who here learned some gun handling rules this morning? I think everybody. So does this sound familiar? If I sweep my muzzle across somebody's leg on the range because I'm being a little sloppy, is that immediately catastrophic? Maybe not. It happens, people flag people all the time and nothing bad happens. But what if I, you know, sweep a direction of high consequence while also having my finger on the trigger and my stacking tolerance is the other direction? So the firearms rules, the gun handling rules are layered to the point where if you break one, you may be okay. When you start breaking multiple is when you start getting into real trouble and your odds go way up of a negative incident. So we're stacking tolerances, positive or negative, when it comes to risk mitigation. So these are the 4 goals as it relates to risk mitigation in your home when you're talking about protecting yourself from potentially violent threats. If I had more than 2 hours, we could go into all the other stuff. Swimming pools are dangerous, fire, you know, falls in and around the home, all that stuff. But what we're going to be focusing on today is the human predator, 2-legged version, and how to protect ourselves from them. So what we're looking at is avoidance. Best thing you can do is never even pop up on somebody's radar who might target you for violence. Now, even if you do everything right, will you sometimes pop up on somebody's radar? Sure. So the next step is deterrence. They size you up, they select you, or examine you and consider you for selection to target you for violence, and then you deter them through a bunch of different stuff we're going to get into detail about. And then they say, nah, that's not my guy. That's not the house. I'm going to drive on. Then failing that, let's say that for whatever reason, either you failed in avoidance or deterrence, or avoidance and deterrence, despite doing everything right, has failed. Now, they decided, yep, I'm going in that house. Middle of the night, middle of the day, I mean, we'll get into some of that later on. But then your next best defense, your next layer of defense is early warning. Because if Jennifer decided to stab me right now, would I be in trouble? Yeah, I would. Wouldn't have a lot of reaction time. If she got up and started running across the room at me with knife raised above her head, where I've got a little early warning, and the distance doesn't matter, it's the temporal nature of it, that if I have cues or anything else that indicates me ahead of time that a threat is coming, and I've got time or distance, which equates to time, I've got more options. So early warning is the next thing. And then failing all of that stuff, if everything goes wrong, Murphy's Law is just all over you today, and you've done everything right, but it doesn't matter, you've got somebody kicking in your door, then the goal is dominance. Okay, righteous dominance of the situation. And these are, if you look at it, they're kind of concentric circles as you work your way in, okay? Layers of security. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move on? Awesome.